Spurgeon here with RevZilla, and today I am in beautiful Utah where I'm getting to ride Kawasaki's new Versys-X 300. And the purpose of this first ride review is to really figure out what this bike is and where it falls into line. So my first question to Kawasaki was simply that. It was, why not call this thing a KLR X300? And their response was simple. They said, Spurge, we see the KLR 650 as a bike that's really, an off-road bike with some street pretense, whereas with the Versys, we see this as a street bike that has some off-road, dirt road capabilities to it. And really where it falls in line is in the small displacement family of motorcycles. For riders that aren't looking at a cruiser or a sport style bike, there's not too much out there for them right now. So this is going to fill a void for riders that are looking for something a little more upright, maybe a little bit more touring capable. My first initial impressions just sitting on the motorcycle was it's extremely comfortable. From an ergonomic standpoint, much roomier than I was expecting, much roomier than the pictures let on. I can add luggage to this. I've got a windscreen up front. It's definitely going to be more touring oriented. The 32-inch seat height works really well. I'm 6'3", still very comfortable. I talked to some of the shorter riders, 5'1" to 5'5", that are out on this ride with us. They didn't have any problem reaching the ground, especially compared to some of the KLR 650 with a 35-inch seat height. This is going to be a much more approachable machine for shorter riders out there. The one thing to note, if you are planning on doing some longer days with it, the saddle is a bit firm, so I'd probably be looking into investing in something like an Airhawk for some additional comfort for longer days. And if you're looking at this and you're thinking, Spurge, there is no way I'm doing long days in a Versys, you'd be wrong. I did a little over 200 miles yesterday. We're going to get close to 200 miles today, and honestly, it's extremely comfortable. I was actually really surprised with how comfortable it was over long distances. And from a performance standpoint, the one thing that really struck me while we were riding this was how capable the suspension was. When I first saw those ads come out where there's riders 2-up, I thought, absolutely not, no way. Even if the engine can handle it, there is no way the suspension on the Versys-X 300 is going to be able to handle 2-up riding. And I just might be wrong. I'm actually really impressed. A lot of times when you're looking at a bike around the $5,000 price point, the first place that an OEM is going to cut from the budget is going to be with the suspension, and it's actually much more thought out than I was expecting. There's minimal adjustment. It's a KYB setup front and rear. There's no adjustment for the front. There's just preload adjustment at the rear. But all things considered, they did a pretty good job with this setup, and it is going to be a long travel suspension, which means you're looking at just over 5 inches of travel up front, about 5.5 inches of travel out back, and together that's going to give you just north of 7 inches of ground clearance. And that ground clearance is important because it's the only thing that's going to protect your exhaust if you are riding off-road. And I say that because Kawi designed the exhaust to run underneath the engine. And they did that because they're saying that it helps to keep heat off the riders from a touring standpoint. The problem there, though, is that exhaust is the first thing you're going to smash into if you're riding too aggressively off-road, because there's no skid plate available for this bike. I would love to see a skid plate for the Versys-X. Now, the other thing you'll notice with that exhaust is that's going to be the telltale sign of the changes made to the engine. So this is the exact same engine out of the Ninja 300. The internals have not changed. What has changed, however, is going to be the intake, the exhaust, and the final gearing. And Kawi claims that this is going to give you more low to mid-range power. I'm here to tell you that this is an engine that you're still going to have to wind out. I find myself between 75 and 8,500 RPM comfortably cruising, and if you're really romping on it, you're going to run this thing to the red line constantly. If you're a new rider, that might be a little bit disconcerting for you. I'm here to tell you that it's okay. Run this thing up there. It's going to sound like the world's angriest hummingbird, but it's going to work just fine for you. So don't be afraid to sit in that upper third of the RPM range. For those of you with some experience riding off-road, you're going to be really used to low-end torque and mid-range power out of an off-road machine. This isn't going to give you that. This is going to be a bit vanilla from that standpoint. But the counterpoint to that is that for riders that have never ridden off-road before, it's going to be a very approachable engine. Even myself, when I was running between 9 and 12,000 RPM in second, third gear off-road, trying to slide that rear end around corners, I had a very hard time doing that. And for riders that have never been off-road, when you're standing up for the first time and you bounce over a big rock and you whack that throttle with your right hand unintentionally, you don't have to worry about this kind of kicking out on you, because maximum input from the right hand means minimal output at the rear wheel, which is going to help new riders to build confidence as they slowly dip their toes in the dirt. Now on the highway, I'm able to cruise comfortably at 70, 75 miles an hour. I talked to some of the smaller riders that said they were able to get up to triple digits. I didn't see that. I was able to crest 90, but comfortably speaking, this bike will sit 70, 75 miles an hour on the highway all day long. The Versys-X 300 carries an MSRP of $5,400, and what that means is that there are going to be a few areas here that you can see where they cut costs. The first place you'll notice it is that if you want ABS, you have to pay a $300 premium over the base price. Now that doesn't bother me as much as the fact that I can't turn the ABS off. So for a bike that's really intended to introduce riders to off-road riding, I would love to be able to switch that ABS off when I want to. The other thing you'll notice are the levers on this bike. They're not going to be adjustable. I've got longer fingers, works just fine for me. If you have shorter fingers though, it might be a bit of a reach to the brake and the clutch lever. The final note here is that there's going to be a wide accessory catalog with this bike, but there's one thing that I wish that they would have included standard, and that's going to be a center stand. For a bike that's coming with spoke wheels that's running tubes, a center stand is a must-have if you're using any real touring capabilities of this bike. The first time you get a flat tire on the side of the road, a center stand is going to be worth its weight in gold. So you can add that to it. I would definitely recommend it, but I would have loved to have seen that as a standard offering. All things considered though, I think Kawasaki did a great job introducing a new bike to the small displacement segment. For riders out there that are looking for a bike that's going to give them some touring prowess, a little more upright seating position that's not styled like a cruiser or a sport bike, this is going to fill a void in the market. Now there's a lot of additional information on this bike that I simply don't have time to cover right now because I want to get back out and enjoy my time here in Utah. But if you want additional facts on this bike, now would be the time to head over to Common Tread and read my first ride review of the Versys-X 300. And as always, make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube to keep up with all the content we have rolling out. From first rides like this one to full bike reviews to product reviews, we've got you covered at RevZilla.com. Thank you for joining me today in beautiful Utah for the first ride of the Versys-X 300. I'm Spurge. Enjoy the ride.